Is that right?
You push hard now. Okay, great. Now, what do y'all want space wise?
I just need the front up here.
Are we all done, Susan? We good?
I would change.
And that did give a concession. Because everybody wants it right.
All right, so
You know what? You may-
my agenda, Bob, I was thinking.
Yeah.
Is to go ahead and go through
I'll be right back.
the service first
Okay.
and
How are you doing?
present this. Go through Broker Bay and some of the functions,
Okay,
and then any discussion afterwards.
so couple of questions that have come up so far. One, I don't know the actual number. You gave me the numbers for Broker Bay, but what's my total MLS due starting in January, my first quarter?
138 and a few change.
138.
So about $30 more than now.
$24.
And what was showing time?
Can't complain, sir.
You know,
I have no idea.
It was individual.
Independent road or by road.
what if an HMO to do both? How would we show that in MLS? Showing instructions.
I'm gonna show that as well, but it's still, so nothing has changed with showing time at all.
You heard too, that I think I mentioned this to you, that the first quarter, they're gonna waive fees.
Well, I wonder what made them even think about doing.
I don't know.
You know,
Maybe something
they've been providing you service for probably 7 years or more.
Yeah.
Under showing time and
Now there's.
probably then they didn't think anything about offering a break, did they?
So contracts and stuff are still, contracts are still made by the broker and everything with.
Yeah, so if we have a contract so that it's all of our age automatically included, flat fee kind of things.
Hi.
But yeah, I'll show in MLS what that's gonna look like. Okay, that's how. But as far as. One or the other. A replacement, it's just another.
Script people say, so does that mean showing time's going away? And we have to switch to, that's not what it is. I can change it. I do have a challenge with that list you sent me from Netrix. I've got people on that list that are not on the user list for Broker Bay. I've added some people, but I had to get all their information because it asked for more than just their name and gas or whatever.
So if you had to generalize, would you say most of those were licensed assistants or licensed staff or unlicensed?
Yeah, and there'll be a commonality. One of them is Cynthia Greco. She's native with us. She has a broker's license. But so does Dick Dillingham. There's all of these. Mike Brody was originally not on the list. He's now on the list. I need real commonality of why someone. I don't know. So if you take two, we're gonna charge you.
No, I didn't take two. I didn't take two. I took what's inside.
I just, he's got a.
I'll do that after you guys. We'll do you. That's the big reason why we're here, and then I'll go into the changes. So, it's an introduction. I'm gonna do a more in detail class next month, so they become manageable for January 3rd. Theoretically, they're gonna be on zip. You have it on our computer programs, you should have it on, I guess, DocuSign or whatever in our command.
You confirm for me and Ryan that the EAR one that was banned. Identical is a correct application form other than the branding.
Yeah. You see, realtor Jack's are. You see their numbers, 1601. Draft across. What I tell the reason comes to is that whatever correct it is that makes it. DAR is not limited. DAR what is the results and contract checks. Question sometimes. We thought about you. Except, one dentist that DAR. That's it. So that will be that. It's not good I'm sure if we get going, that you don't stand in front of the camera back. We have some Zoom people who will, our lovely faces. Morning, Mike, how are you doing, sir? Miss Jill? Morning. Thank you guys for being here. Yeah, coming out. He was in the neighborhood. That's right.
Right.
Who's here? Right, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Okay, the contract materials that we have, we'll talk about those after we've done the Broker Bay. We're going to touch on the Broker Bay concepts and all those, that information first. Thank you very much for being here. I'm serious, is something I said? And please sign in, because it's important for us to know who's in the classes. Why do we care to know who's in the class? Anybody have an idea?
In case we have a violation that we have documentation that we've been trained on.
It's a good point. Brooke, I like that. It wasn't what I thought about, but it's, I like that.
So you see why it is important.
Yeah, see why, because one of the things, on the rare occasion that Mike gets a truck complaint, because it's his license. And all you guys are under, they have 19 questions. One of the first things they get from track, 19 questions. And 2 of them relate to the training. And one of the things I ask is, how do you monitor, how do you track the training? Because they want to know if somebody has done something they should have done, is this something you train them on? So track standpoint, it's important. More importantly, though, this is what we're doing for you. Education is a high priority to train you. We know that what we do is help you build your business, and that's a huge function of what we're doing. What if we have any more chairs? Seven there. Okay. So we're doing the training. We want to make sure that we're doing the training for as many people as we can deal with. I will touch a little bit on Broker Bay, and then I'll let our people here. So we have Ryan Guile with CCAR. We have Terry Smith with CCAR. We have Jason Petrie in the back here with CCAR. So we've got lots of good CCAR folks to help us. This is a new showing service that is available. In fact, some of you have already been using it. You use it for open houses and listings. So it's available right now. What will happen January 1st, and guys, when I talk about this, if I'm off a little bit, correct me, if you'll say, wait, well, that's kind of right, but it's not quite, okay. What will happen January 1st? It doesn't mean that showing time goes away. What it means is you'll start being charged for Broker Bay. It will automatically be included in your quarterly MLS dues. Is that correct? That we good with that?
Yes.
So it's available, it's been available since November 16th. I've got a list of all the users under Broker Bay. I did send an email out and many of you responded that you hadn't received anything from Broker Bay. And even those of you who haven't received anything, when I pulled down your name on the Broker Bay list, you were on it. So you were already registered, you were there. So when you go into Netris and pull down Broker Bay, go in there and see if you're there. If you're not, let me know. So we can add your name to the user list as you work through it. So we're going to talk about Broker Bay. Brian's going to kind of give you some information about how it works and the information on it. After he gets through, and Terry Smith is also here, who's the director of our MLS at CCAR. After that, we'll entertain your questions about what we didn't cover and what you really need to find out and know as you work through it. And as you know from all my classes, we really do want your questions. We want to know kind of what your thoughts are and what you need to work through it. So let's all welcome Brian, Terry, Jason. Brian, it's yours. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. So again, my name is Brian Giles. I've been with CCAR for just over 8 years. I was in the MLS department for pretty much all of that until recently. I've recently moved to the member outreach and retention services for CCAR. So I get to deliver fun things to y'all and tools that you may not be aware of. So again, like Bob said, we're going to talk about Broker Bay. In this room, if you can show of hands, how many have used or have set up your Broker Bay as of right now? Okay, so just a couple. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is that Bob has turned on Broker Bay for the agents in his office. So when you log into Netris, you're going to see, you're not going to have a lot of these icons that I have because I am a staff person, but you will have this one button here, this Broker Bay button right here. When you click on that button, it will take you into prompts to sign into your account. So it's going to ask you to sign in, create a password, and so on. Now, once you do that, it's going to be a single sign-on for this portion right here. So you'll set up your account. You'll have a separate password for Broker Bay. However, the next time you sign into MLS, you can simply just click on that icon and it will log you in. Now, if you download their app or if you go directly to the Broker Bay website, you will then have to use whatever that password is that you created during your registration. So it is separate. But again, that icon is there. So let me give you kind of what we're going to be talking about so that you can kind of save your questions unless I missed it. We're going to kind of go in an order. So I'm going to show you what Broker Bay looks like on MLS. Then I'm going to actually show you the system and what functions are available to you. And just like Bob had said, this does not replace showing time. There is going to be showing time listings, and then there's going to be Broker Bay listings. Showing time is not going away. They are not being bought out by anyone. Nothing is theoretically changed with them, except for maybe a contract between the broker and their service. Okay, so you're still going to see both of those on the MLS. However, Broker Bay is extremely comparable to showing time, if not a little bit more. Okay, so this is just going to be in addition to to showing time. So you'll have an option to do either one. But like we had also just discussed, Broker Bay will become part of your MLS dues. So quarterly, you'll pay roughly about $8 more as another service. And you can see the two services that have actually been, Broker Bay is not the only one that has raised your MLS charges. You're getting a lot more suites of tools, two of them being Broker Bay and also the new MLS Touch. So if you, just on that real quick, if you've not downloaded MLS Touch, that is something that you'll want to do. It is completely integrated with the MLS, and it's the best platform on an app to date. So get rid of anything that says MLS Go on your phone and replace it with MLS Touch. Okay. Back to Broker Bay. So like Showing Time, not like Showing Time. Showing Time charged the list agent per listing. Buyer agent didn't have to pay anything. Broker Bay now is equally charged. So basically, a listing agent can put in a listing. Buyer agent can work all the showings and everything through Broker Bay. However, both parties are being charged a quarterly fee, okay, to use this. However, you get all the suite services that Broker Bay has. So you get their concierge mode where you can call in and have that go through the Broker Bay system. They will answer phone calls from agents and set those listings up. All of that is available to you at no additional charge. Okay, so you just use it, buyer reps use it, and there's no additional charge for the service. Okay, it's a flat fee, again, included with your MLS dues. So again, with the other showing service, you would have to set that up with their service, pay their terms and conditions, their service fees and all of that, just as it has been. Okay, so again, you're not limited, you just have an addition to. So in MLS, before we get into Broker Bay, I'm going to show you as a list agent what that's going to look like to set that up. And in the showing section, you now have the showing service. This section right here. You have the selection for Showing Time. You have the selection for Broker Bay. And then you also have one for none. So that means that if you choose not to use any services and you want to schedule everything yourself, you certainly can. So this is just the surface. This is how you make the icons appear on your listing. So if you select Broker Bay, you'll get that little bullet with wings on your listing. Or if you do it with Showing Time, you'll get that little band thing up at the top of your listing. You won't be able to have, it's one or the other. Everyone tracking on that so far? Also, in your showing requirement, and if Terry can back me up on this one, under your showing requirements, there is still a Showing Time CSS. Is the one for Broker Bay, is it showing service?
They have not added a separate, what's getting the link at the top of the page right now is that showing service on the right side. They're trying to get that label updated to add Broker Bay standalone.
So in the meantime, if you're a list agent, make sure you select what showing service you're using, then at least select a showing service or appointment service out of this list here to alert other agents what type of listing service you're using. And if it's against, you still have everything available for show and goes and everything. I will show you on Broker Bay how you're going to set up your listing to allow show and goes and to all the other settings and so on. So we will get to that momentarily. One other thing that I want to show you what it looks like on MLS as a search. So I'm just going to do a very quick search here, active, and we'll do city of Plano. Do a price tag of 300 mice.
You got any of that?
Or on the.
With condos.
Yeah.
Let's go 5 years. There. A little bit better there. So what I've done is you can, if you are so inclined, which you probably will never use this, just to let you know, you could search listings that are only Broker Bay or by showing time. Again, you would probably never, ever need that because you want to look at all listings. But so what it looks like is on the results page, if you were to add a column called showing service, you apply it. You can see in a quick glance, some are showing time already, some are broker based, some have no setup on their listing at all. Okay. But you can see that it is already being utilized out there. And you'll see this here in just a minute when I get into the actual system. So without further delay, I am going to pick on one member of the roster here is and I'm going to with Peggy Hills. Is Peggy in the room today?
No, she's over sometime.
Yeah, she's doing my Zoom.
Okay, well,
I think she's on Zoom.
Peggy, I'm using your account. And
Hopefully it's correct.
yeah. So basically what you'll see when you first come in here is your dashboard. Okay, this is the point where you can just see all your action that's going on in Broker Bay. You'll see that your brokerage is over here. And right here, you can see that that you have an icon there to show your initials or a profile picture of yourself. So as of right now, we got Mr. Baker's face there. It's the face of his offices. That could change later on, but as of right now, that's
Is that a hint?
it's a good looking picture, Bob.
It's a good looking picture. I tell you how long it took me to find somebody that took a good picture. It kind of looked like. Hard.
So as a list agent, when you come into your dashboard, you're going to see your first column here called listings. So this is going to be your listings that are available on MLS, and you can interact with those to set up services and so on. Then showings, and I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail. I'm just kind of going over a quick overview of what we're going to go over. You're going to look at showings that you've set up as a buyer or a list agent, the tasks that you need to do for that listing. If you're on a team, this coordinates with the MLS, so it's fully integrated to the MLS in that it reads team settings as well. So if you're on a team, you can certainly see those as well. And your contact management. Now, I say fully integrated, but this does not pull over your contacts from MLS. You'll have to create your contacts as you go. But that is available there too. But what we're going to go forward first is kind of your profile settings. So right up here in the top left, you can see that there's a question mark. So that's your help button. If you were to click on help, you can actually, after this meeting, you can go actually to Broker Bay, sign up for a webinar, and they will have a live webinar with you. So you can schedule that. It'll probably be in a room full of other participants and attendees, but you can get a one-on-one if you have very pointed or specific questions to Broker Bay. You can ask them directly. The next one is a folder. That one's more for the brokerage. The bell is for notifications. So if you get notifications and feedback from your clients or other agents, it will notify you there. And then also you have a chat bubble. So whoever else is on Broker Bay, which Broker Bay is now part of all Metra subscribers. So that's not just CCAR. That is all of our sister associations. Anyone that has an MLS subscription gets Broker Bay. Okay, and it'll be part of their dues as well. So what's neat about this is that you can actually chat with other Netris agents through this. So you can chat them up through the conversation bubbles and so on. And then this over here is just a way to get to the widgets that are already on your dashboard. So taking a look at this, what you can do is you can click on your listing, okay? And it gives you a lot of functions just right at the top. It gives you messages that you need to read, and it gives you access to all of your listings. So right here, it says, hey, you've got this listing, but you haven't set it up for showings. There's no showing service on it. So if you want to do that, let's do it now. So you would click on configure showings. And then when you come into this, you can see instructions are unconfigured, meaning that these things in red, what type of appointment it's going to be, you have to set that. So if it's, and eventually, this is going to be pretty neat, and it is available almost, is a super key, super E key. So just real quick on some background on that, I'm kind of bouncing around just a little bit, but giving you some information as we go. Everyone know the company Carrier? Has anyone ever heard of Carrier? AC units, things like that? Yep. So Carrier actually owns Supra. Supra is still under the same Carrier umbrella with Broker Bay. So Broker Bay is owned by Carrier. So eventually, Broker Bay and Supra will be fully integrated on the Supra app and on the Broker Bay app. Is that tracking pretty good? Yep. So you'll be able to manage your listings through your Supra app as well. So that'll be integrated. Now, all of those things that you want to set up, you can, as far as availability goes, you can set up what your minimum notice of showing is. Do you want to set that up 24 hours in advance, 8 hours in advance? How much do you want to show? Or you can even select overnight notice required, meaning that you'd set it up today, but you would get a notice of availability tomorrow. You can also do a max showing duration. So the list or the buyer agent would get an alert to say, hey, time's up. We got somebody coming in. We need you to wrap things up, basically. So you can set that to an hour, to a custom, to 30, 45 minutes, whatever you want. Or if you don't really care, if it's a show and go, or if it's empty house or whatever the case, you can put on there overlap showings as yes. And if you say no limit, that means that people can just stack on top of each other and come into the house and show. You can also set it to no more than 2, up to 5, or just leave it open to everyone. That's up to you. If you turn the overlapping showings off, say, I don't want overlapping showings, you can certainly also create a buffer between each showing. So if somebody's been in there an hour, maybe you need to go in and spruce things up. I don't want somebody else coming into that house for another 30 minutes. Then it will buffer that time for the next appointment. Or you can have no buffer. So if one ends, another one can immediately begin. That's up to you how you want to set that up. And then you can also give approval settings to whomever, being that the seller can confirm appointments on their app that is going to be given to them through an email. Broker Bay boasts that for any level of technical savvy, this email and this link ought to be the easiest thing since sliced bread. Hopefully. So I've not seen it. I've not tried it out. But your seller will get an email with a link That'll take them to the Broker Bay app. They don't even have to sign in. You're giving them permission to confirm appointments, okay? The next one is to just auto confirm all appointments. So basically once they register, they just go. There's no confirmation. This is basically the equivalent of the show and go, okay? Your box will be up there. You'll have your instructions. They'll register their appointment and then they'll just go without any approval needed. And then there's also the agent's confirmation. So if you want to work your own showings, you have the ability to do that as well. Then, of course, you give it the access type and so on. And you can set up all the other little things that go on there. What do you want them to do? You want them to keep lights on or off? Do you care? Do you want them to leave a business card? Whatever you want, leave that checked. In their app, they will see what you ask them to leave or to do. Everyone good on setting up your instructions? And this showing instructions here, regardless whether it's a seller or anything else, the showing instructions will only show within the brokerage and to Broker Bay. So when you set that up, the concierge mode, if there is something like, hey, there's a vicious dog on site, please beware. Then Broker Bay's concierge and or what is it, other agents who, so yeah, it's listing, buyer, and Broker Bay will only see these showing instructions. So if you say if there's a vicious dog in the backyard, don't go back there. And if they get a call from another, if they being Broker Bay gets a call from one of those agents, they'll look at this and they will explain, hey, you're going to that appointment, there's a vicious dog in the backyard, don't go back there. So that is shown between all agents and Broker Bay. Now, we're going to go back to some settings up here. So if you don't want to set this all up every single time you have a listing, because you just got listings pouring in all the time as a listing agent, right? It's got.
That's what Tommy's situation is. Lots of them.
Oh, there you go.
He needs us kind of help.
Well, this is specific to Tommy, so So if you click on, it's either going to be your profile picture or your initials up here in the very top right. Turn around there for a second. Then it's going to drop down a menu. And in this menu, you can go into your account settings. Now, this gives you access to your profile image, to your name, to your contact information, email address, and so on. Also, it gives you access to your listing and to your concierge settings as well. So again, that's under your profile information. So if you were to go under your listing settings, you can set all of your defaults up. So when you create a listing, you say, okay, well, I want automatic feedback to come back to me. I want this, and this, and it will set those defaults up for you so that you don't have to go into every single line item and change it again. You just set it and forget about it. So you go through, you can show all of your minimum showing notices, max durations, and so on. Just set that all up and then that becomes your global settings. Make sense?
Question,
Yes.
automatic merge suggestion, is that?
So if you have a duplicate showing on there, it will say, hey, you have a duplicate. Do you want to merge those and pick one or the other? So typically you'll want to look at those before you just merge, I would imagine. But it's there if you don't, Now, if you also click on Live Concierge, this is the new number that you're going to put in the contact information. So this is the number to Broker Bay's concierge service. So when it asks you for the contact information, you will put in this number. And then the billing, you won't see anything on the billing because again, this is billed differently now than directly through Broker Pay. So we're going to go back now to our dashboard and show you some things that you can do from here as a buyer agent, as a list agent, both, and what have you. So up here at the top, you can look for other agents, or you can also look for listings directly through your Broker Pay application and or website. So again, this is directly connected to MLS. So as you search, now it's extremely limited, your search, you need to know street numbers or street names and things like that. But, or an MLS number, but you can put those in here. So let's say, we'll do a Cox Street. So you can see as you put in a name, it'll bring up that street. It'll pull up anything that has like in this case, Cox in it. So you can also see what showing service is either they have or they don't have. So if it has not Broker Pay, we don't know who they're using. If it's blank, they're using Broker Pay. So what's cool about this is that if you're doing a search for that, you can automatically go ahead and just schedule your showing with them. You can certainly do it on MLS. There's going to be an icon for that as well. So let me just show you that here really quick. Showing time. Broker Pay. Let's say, put this one here in just a minute too. But as you can see up here at the top, this icon will either be that bullet with a wing, or it'll be that showing time icon. You will then be able to see it immediately which one the list agent is using. So you can schedule however you need. But that's where the location of that icon is going to be. So in Broker Pay, you can go to that MLS number if you wanted to. You can, again, there's all kinds of different ways, however you want to schedule. You can either do it through the MLS, you do it through Broker Pay or so on. But here you can schedule that, or if there's some that are on a bunch of streets, you can certainly put those in there as well. But here you can communicate with the list agent. You can send them a text. You can favorite this, meaning that it'll put it into this favorites list, and then you can just do a bunch at once. So if you're looking at Cox Street, or if you're looking at some other street, and then you just put them all into your favorites list, then you can just schedule them all at one time, okay? Or you could share it. So if you want to share this with your client, you just click on share. It'll give you the email, put in your body of that, and then it will show them this listing just like it would out of MLS. So it would have the customer view on there. It'll show the listing, pictures, and so on. You just send it to them and see if they want to go see it or what have you. So that's using the search bar up at the top. So looking at listings. Now, another thing about showings is you can also do a search, and let's say, what's a good name for a street? Anyone?
Main Street.
Main Street, there you go. Let's get into the downtown areas. And doesn't look like we have anything on Main Street.
How about North Crest?
North Crest.
Five-year on the market.
All right. And they wanted to be for some time.
So let's say we want this one. We want to go see 4215 North Crest because that's what our buyers are looking for. You can come in here, you can see all the pictures just like you would on MLS. So you don't have to go back and forth. You can search if you write down a bunch of MLS numbers. You can come back in here. But you can also add to a tour, or you can book the showing right then and there. So if you do this, let's say we're going to add to a show, to a tour. We're going to create a new tour. So now that one is on there. Now we're going to search on another street. We'll say Second. Okay, we also want this one to be on our tour. And we're gonna edit to. All right, so now it gives you driving directions for this as well. So you can do driving directions, and if these were both Broker Bay scheduled listings, then right down here, you could send the request for both of them. It'll give you all of the current showing times and everything. You just list your directions and then when you want to show up. So you can certainly create tours and so on.
Will optimize the route if you have like 4 of them?
So it tries to, but if it's not up to your optimization, you can move listings just like you can on MLS in whatever order you feel best. So yes, you still have control of that to customize it a little bit, because it does try to optimize it to get the quickest route. All right, and then analytics, they haven't quite gotten there yet. So analytics are to come. So it'll take from super information and from MLS information, and it will start to form analytics. So this system they boast 270,000 subscribers in the North America region. So they're a Canadian-born company, but now they're in North America. So they're gathering data and they're creating databases for that, but it's just not reliable. So I understand for Peggy Hill, I'll let her be the judge of that, but it does say that it is not as reliable as going to the MLS and running your own statistics as of right now. So take it with a grain of salt is what it's saying. So I'm not gonna agree to that for Peggy. She can make her own decision. Now, if you do click on the brokerage tab, this is all of the listings that are available within the brokerage. So you can scroll through all of those and you can book them if they're Broker Bay listings. You can also, within the brokerage, utilize this haves and wants. So if you have a need, you have a listing that's not selling well, or you need to, whatever your needs and wants may be, you can put it on basically a broker board, I guess, one of those communication boards, just a bulletin board. So you can put that out there. And so you can look for things like, if you add a note, you say you have a want. You can do anything from you have a property to a short-term lease. You can also do service provider. So if you're looking for a plumber in a specific area or electrician, painter, whatever the case, some kind of trade, you can communicate with your office and see who has a trade that they would suggest to come out to your property. And then once you save that, it goes onto the board, and then everyone in the office can look at it when you go into Broker Bay. Terry, is there anything major that I'm missing?
Not that I can pass on. One comment about analytics. So Showing Time has analytics, Broker Bay has analytics. Those are, when you look at those, you need to understand that those are all of the showing analytics are only based on Showing Time appointment services. They're not going into MLS and trying to gather how many showings have been done across the board, whether they're agent appointments, showing time appointments, or broker bay. That's one of the things that brokers and agents want to think about as they're making the decision whether they use a single service or try to combine. Is that, again, if you're looking to tie showing analytics that are being produced, they're always not going to be the full universe of listings that you see in MLS. And then the only other, I'm not sure what showing time is going to tell you if you want to, if you're not continuous with them, what they're going to allow you to do on having both services available to you. But again, you're welcome to approach that question with showing time. I don't think they're going to allow you to start up and then take a break and come back in month to month like that, but they'll have to ask that question.
So I thought of something here that was actually pretty cool, in Broker Bay as well that I found here. This is in your, let me show you how I got there. You go into your listing. And then if it says configure showings, you can go into there. So now we're just into your showing configuration. Here you can see that Peggy is the only one that's going to be receiving emails. If you want your client to receive them, you can put the contact in here as well, and it will send those notifications to your contact or your client as well. Another thing that's really cool here is that you can block off certain amounts of time. So right now it's either available or restricted. So we're going to turn these from available to restricted. So let's say your seller does not want to have anything before 9 a.m. You can restrict that time, or if they don't want anything past 7:30, you can also restrict that amount of time as well. You can also, let's say if there is a certain time that your seller just opens up the house and it's just a show and go, and you don't need to confirm anything with them. Let's say from 11:30 to 12:30, you can select that button up here that says auto confirm. And during that time period, people can just go in and out or per your showing instructions.
Yeah.
But all of these are click or unclick. So if there's certain times, it's intuitive to be able to do that. Or if you don't want any of those to be available, you just again click on them again and it removes it. Then everything that's available is then per your showing instructions up top. I just thought that was pretty cool.
What about open house? If can you use that same thing for open house?
Yeah.
Where it's all available from,
From a certain time.
yeah,
Yeah.
certain times for 2 days?
Yep.
And does that automatically send it out anywhere except just people inquiring, or does it send it out?
So the only places you're gonna, I believe your only places you're gonna see that is on MLS through the open house.
Okay.
So you'll still look for open houses the same. Yeah. So you'll still put your showing instructions and so on. Yes,
You were clicking and dragging and doing multiple fields down to restrict that.
yes,
You can't just hit each one of those individually, can't you?
that is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so just if you see them green, or if you just need them to be restricted, put it on restricted. Made a mistake, click on it again, and you're good to go. All right, that is, there is still a lot of little nuances within Broker Pay that you can mess around with and check out. You can also go to their webinars, like I say. Yes, ma'am.
You keep referring to everybody getting an email for notification. Do y'all have texting for notification of showing? Because a lot of us currently receive texts for notifications of showing.
Yeah.
They can also text our clients, since most of us live and die by our phone. When we're on the phone.
Yes. Yeah, and I believe if I'm correct, Terry, that gets set up here in that listing contact as well. If there's a phone number that they can get
Yeah,
text.
that's what the concierge service is gonna pull up and get for those.
They can text us a request or the.
Right.
Confirmed appointment or something
By text.
by text.
By text.
By text.
All right, well, that is my portion of Broker Bay. I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to the questions. Are there any questions so far?
Oh, I do have a couple, and I have talked about this. Is there a sense that Broker Bay is still developing? That there are some nuances, some things that they're still working on, so as we look to the first quarter of more active use?
So primarily that analytic side of as they grow subscribers within the Netris system, those analytics will be better that they are able to pull. There is a offer module that they're working on within Broker Bay. Right now, it's just a notification that offer is coming to you. It's not tracking and doing any comparisons. You'll probably still want to do that over in Command or internally, how you make those comparisons. They do have there are templates that you can create on the feedback side, the request for feedback, under your agent, both at the agent and the office level, that if the office has certain templates that you like to use, you can carry those over. But again, the primary Netris had been working on this from the time period that Showing Time announced that they were being acquired by the Zillow Group. There was a huge request for by Netris brokers to try to find alternatives for showing and appointment services. Again, that's why it's somewhat unique, and as they went out and started looking for those services that by chance Supra was already dealing with, or Carrier was already dealing with Broker Bay, and they were also owners of Supra. But again, that doesn't limit the lockbox. Broker Bay works with Central Lock, any of your manual combo locks. Not that you got to use Supra or the key service that we have. And the other part of that, it's going to address the statewide coverage of you getting requests for appointments from agents that are outside of the Netris area, and integrating if there are members down at HAR or San Antonio or any other place like that, that there'll be some somewhat assurance. They're licensed agents. They're already working in the Supra system. Give you some base due diligence, and then you'll have to follow Mr. Baker's instructions as to what other things you may want to ask of those people. They'll be able to use their key cards to access the boxes here as cooperating. And again, the mandate or the requirement of NAR that you've got to be able to provide access to listings they may be in MLS, but if you're promoting them out on the portals and you have agents inquiring, there shouldn't be any restriction as to their membership in MLS. And
As long as we understand cooperation does not require compensation. An agent coming up from San Antonio, we've got to cooperate to the benefit of our client. But unless they're a member of our MLS of Netris, we're not required to compensate them. We may, depending on the nature of the transaction. Need to separate those two. We will cooperate, we won't create conditions that get in the way of showings. But you need to make sure that you're able to negotiate. Because you got someone out of area, chances are every time somebody needs to see the property, that's going to be you, not them. They'll have extra work, every situation. And many of those, some of those people outside of the area are doing minimum services listings, and of course, we've got policies on that. The whole access to the property, you know, we've got some broker policy issues that we need to be aware of. On an occupied property, you're never allowed to use a combo lock. Have to use super.
Say
You're never allowed to use a combo lock on an occupied property. Got to use super, got to have that electronic, because combo locks, one of the things that were clear as back in the old days where we used to do those. And I can remember way back when we had different types of systems, best we've ever had it right now. But when you got a combo lock and a combination, when you put it on your house, 10 minutes later, everybody in town has it. I mean, this is how that works.
And that's our brokerage,
Pardon me?
that's our KW.
That's our-
notes.
Yeah,
Rule.
exactly. Mike?
See them all the time.
Is that new or have?
Yes, sir.
So the question, gentlemen, is why are these running parallel? Are we on a transition period and one's going to go away? It's going to be just, are they going to run parallel ad infinitum?
So to be clear, Showing Time has always been their own company. Has been utilized by brokers and agents to use them as a showing service. They are not going away. They are still an entity. They are just a separate service altogether. It's like if you prefer Target versus Walmart. Again, they're not going anywhere, but they are available still to you. Broker Bay, however, is now part of your MLS dues in that it is available for use at no additional cost now. So you have an option, either go with the no additional cost version, which is extremely similar to any other showing service, if not better. But no, because again, as you saw on the MLS, that there are still agents using Showing Time versus Broker Bay. And Broker Bay is also only adopted by the broker of the designated realtor of that brokerage. So Bob is opted in to use Broker Bay for all of his sales staff. Other brokers may not adopt Broker Bay and may continue just to utilize Showing Time. It's not going away.
But you haven't done anything Showing Time wise either. You just have full access to Showing Time.
We currently have a contract with Showing Time. And it's a flat fee thing for all the agents. It's inclusive of everyone. We'll see how that moves forward. Decisions will be made by the brokerage based on ALC, based on you, based on whatever we've heard. We don't have any confirmation that Showing Time is going to waive fees for the first quarter, which will encourage people to continue to move forward. We don't have a confirmation on that. That's the word that we've been given in a couple of different places. So we're going to see how that goes. We're going to do what works best for you, keeping in mind. And I heard one person say, well, Broker Bay is free. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, you're going to pay your MLS dues quarterly. Broker Bay just happens to be a service that's within that. Whether you use it or not, your MLS dues are going to be the same. So from that standpoint, whether you use Broker Bay or not, it is free. But you're going to pay your MLS dues, whatever they may be. It's just Broker Bay is going to be something that's included in that. So as we move forward, what we're going to really be looking at, and that'll be with Mike and Jill and Angie and so forth, and everybody, is what kind of relationship we're going to have with Showing Time. Is there going to be individual agents contract with them, or we can have another office contract? As far as I know, Jill, it hasn't been determined.
It hasn't, right now, nothing's changing with that. Our office bill's staying the same. The
Yeah.
27.25 you're charged every month. Showing time is in that, and that won't change.
Okay, good. Joe?
Now, right now, currently, using showing time, when you're setting up, let's say you're setting up 10 showings. I would say 10% of those, you're gonna have to call the agent because they're not listed with either showing time or anybody else. You always have to call the show. Now you're adding another burden of setting up a third place. And then also, you know, you schedule your listings, and then all of a sudden somebody calls, no, you can't do it between 10 and 11, you gotta do it between 2 and 3. I mean, it's gonna be a big burden for the agents, my opinion.
You can then call me also, I'll give you permission.
Okay, Danny, did you have a comment or question? You looked like you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I understand part of it, but what I don't understand is didn't understand until you just talked about this, that we still have a continuing contract with showing time. How long is that gonna go on and why are we paying? Is it
That
not
hasn't been
because-
determined, I guess.
Right.
You know, so her question is, you know, how long is our contract with showing time and like that? Hasn't been determined. I think
So
that's.
if we're gonna be
true.
paying for that, even though we're really hopefully gonna be using broker bay anyway. So what the part before you said that, my question was gonna be. I said, feels to me like it's like the difference in using DocuSign and using some service that comes with no charge $1. If you want to use showing time, have at it, but without knowing about the specific contract, what I thought was gonna happen is that wasn't being explained was that you would have to call showing time as an individual person and set up your deal with them and pay them whatever they want to get paid once this deal goes.
I don't
away.
know. That's a
Okay.
conversation the leadership's gonna have to have.
Bob, can you hear me? This is Angie.
It's gonna be individual agents do it. Joe?
So Andy was gonna speak.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We will be meeting as a leadership team. We're not doing anything with showing time right now because our agents need to be able to show homes and they're not all set up with Broker Bay. So we can't do anything with showing time until we know for sure every agent can show homes. And then once we get to that point, then we will meet as a leadership team and decide what we're going to do with along with the ALC.
Jenna has a follow-up question for
Okay,
you.
because I would, this is what I would have thought. I would have thought that the listing agents were the ones who were paying, except for our office, the way we do pay all whatever. That if your listings were in showing time, that's already set up. You're fine with that listing. And buyers weren't paying for showing time anyway. They were using the system to make their appointments. So they could still use the system to make the appointments, even if the listing. The
It
listing
doesn't
is
matter
set up in
who the
showing
listing
time.
is with, a buyer's agent and set up showings.
Right, so that's something, what does that matter? I understand that we need to get all agents signed up on Broker Bay, I get that part, but what is it? Showing time? I don't understand why.
That's gonna be an individual agent decision, I would think. But I think that's a decision that Angie's talking about it. Jill, as leadership, looks at it. What we want to do is make sure whatever the decision is, it doesn't get in the way of you,
Sure,
who you're gonna list property with and your access to showing properties. Want to make sure that's fluid and none of this changes that.
okay, I guess what I'm not clear about is if the listing is set up for showing regardless of which site,
Yeah,
that doesn't have anything to do with whether an agent can go in and make appointments to show the listing.
yeah, what do you do with it?
Right,
Right.
so when she was saying everybody, we have to wait until everybody is set up to be able to show, I'm like, can everybody show a listing that's set up to be shown?
Well, but if you're gonna show a listing that's under showing time, you have to be registered for showing time. Go through that process. And a new agent, for example, when they were looking, said, well, looks to me like most of them are with showing time or most of them with broker base. So if I register for both of them, well, you would. So as a buyer's agent, you know, so you have access to both, regardless of who your listing is with. As a buyer's agent, you'd have access. We will set up showings
I
regardless.
see.
That makes sense. Is that kind of what, understand how that's working?
So we don't have access to show because we're members of the board. It's, we have access to show because. Okay, so we're not, so we don't have, it's hard because we've always just had it, so we don't know why we have it, right? So it's not like that either company, you can show it because you're an agent.
Yeah.
And everybody who's an agent.
Yeah, your license, you register and they've got your license number where you're legitimate to do it.
So we're already registered with showing time, but we choose to use Broker Bay. Do we have to think that we have to do anything with showing time or we're just getting,
No.
we would make an appointment?
Just continue to move forward.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Anyone else? Because they've done a good job, I think, of giving us a nice overview here. Here's the thought here. I think that Netris has done some serious vetting here. They've gone through the process that's from the few people that I'm not in that loop anymore. We've had agents in this office who were president, John Applegate was president of Measures. So we had a lot of access to what's going on there. I think that they've done a great job. What the feedback I get is Broker Bay is an excellent service, has some features and things that are better than Showing Time, although like Showing Time is seeing the competition here and they're stepping up and they're going to try to figure out what they can do to compete with it. What Showing Time, in my opinion, and this is, I'm not trying to be political or whatever, but the battle that Showing Time still has is Zillow. I think a lot of us have said, you know what, we don't want to use a service that Zillow owns. And whether that makes sense or doesn't make sense, I think Broker Bay is a great option. It seems to be working throughout the country and is growing. I think Nectar did a good job of doing it. I sometimes think, does that make sense money wise? We'll see. But as they continue, I think when you're in an office like you are here, and our primary objective is to not do anything that interferes with your business, and we won't. We'll make sure that whatever happens, get people in to explain it, work through it. If we need at some point in time, have somebody from Showing Time come in and say, here's what we're doing, here's how this works with that, we'll do that. We'll make sure that you be able to show properties, list properties, work through the process. And that's what's going to happen. If something pops up, you got a question, I'll Jill. And work through it. So I think it's going to be a really good thing. I frankly, I wasn't on the vote, but I would be in favor of it if I had been on the vote. So I'd say yeah. Anything else that you guys might have for Terry or Brian before we move into the next section of our class? Yes, ma'am. April.
This is gonna be offered by CCAR. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, well, yeah, Chris, I can't.
There's a huge difference. We really need to understand that.
Yeah, because
Regional MLS, Netris, CCAR, ATS. Each association has their own MLS. Netris is a regional MLS over all the associations in our area, including, for example, Abilene. And Netris.
okay.
But go ahead.
So if this is this going to confuse Dallas agents who are not aware of this?
Well, Dallas agents get confused if it's lazy anyway. So. It's being recorded. Wait.
Yeah, I'm going like, they're gonna sit there and go, you better have.
Now, see, it won't make it, when you set up a showing, you're gonna have an MLS showing instructions. You're just gonna follow those like you always have.
Okay.
So that won't make any difference, any changes there.
Yeah.
Because Dallas is in the same regional MLS that we're in. They're all under Netris. So that won't change, that won't do anything at all.
Right. So they'll just Metro space. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll all be good. Yeah.
So whoever has a Netris login and can
Be
get
able
to
to
this
see.
page right here,
Okay.
has access to Broker Bay if their broker has turned those services on for their office. So if you see that icon, you have access to it. Anyone else, again, that sees this page potentially has full access to the program. Now, even if the broker does not turn on the services for Broker Bay, there will be a limited service in that a buyer's rep can still make appointments.
That's what I was confused about.
So everyone will be able to make appointments across the board, regardless of your access level through Broker Bay.
That's good. Larry?
So during this interim, or what seems like a transition phase, what would be the challenge with as a leader, both showing services?
Yeah.
You only use one.
Gotta pick one.
You can't, what would be the challenge?
You have existing listings. Do you need to?
Okay, Carrie has a comment on that.
You can use both services as an agent. You have to select a single appointment service per listing.
Oh, okay.
My question is why?
Why?
Best of both.
Why? Because they said so.
That's not
Larry, back off.
No, but again, because if you're gonna choose to continue utilizing both services, they're not going to overlap or list multiple appointment numbers on your listing. They're trying to make it easy. They're not gonna call the seller multiple times for the appointment.
Three different companies.
So I was trying to address Joe's concern about if you weren't trying to show 10 houses and showing the buyer's agent, 5 of them are on.
It's a big
one,
hassle.
5 are on the other.
And then I was on Henderson County and they have their own MLS, so it's.
But you're still following instructions in MLS for showing. Doesn't matter.
They even have special lock boxes out there.
Be all right.
Yeah, we're good.
One of the things the association's asking, if you get, you need to listen to your sellers and what their experience is as they're getting calls from Broker Bay or Showing Time or whoever the service is. That should be all of our drivers, because if we find out Broker Bay can't deliver, you know, we're Netris is in with them for 5 years right now. So anything can change, and Netris wants to know that the vendors they're selecting for you are going to be able to service and maintain what they're stating. That's one of the concerns we have with, again, the analytics that start being developed and the offer management. If they're not committed to delivering those in a timely fashion, we can't count on them, you know, moving forward into the 2nd through the 5th year and everything. And John Holly won't be afraid to put them on notice that they're not performing.
Yeah.
So is this like a test or a pilot that we're, I mean?
It's a 5-year pilot. We bit the bullet because of the request from brokers to find a alternate.
So it's just, we're just now getting into the.
This is the first time Netris has ever provided showing services. Or there were some services that the brokers told Netris hands off. It's basically been office and agent websites. Netris don't do office and agent websites, nor do most of the associations. That's all on your office pages and your agent pages.
Okay, so Jenny has a question. You have a current listing.
You just.
You have to make a decision.
If you want, I mean, if you have a current listing, it's gonna be, you can, if you want to go full in with, you want to take time to look through all of it, you can do that.
Yeah, and again, what we were suggesting, you maintain what you already have established, so you're not taking your sellers and other agents. And then make the changeover for just your new listings and go forward.
Okay.
What is Zillow? What do they do with our Showing Time listing?
I don't know.
Sure. You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah. And that's a different conversation. We can have a different side. Anything else on this? We really appreciate Brian and Jason and Terry being here to help us with this. Next portion of the class, if you guys need to leave, you just came from Broker Bay, we're gonna talk about the new contracts and the changes. We'll deal with that. If whoever wants to stay for that, we will have a more in-depth class in January on procedures. Where we deal with just what we always have. We don't have the new contracts and zip forms, or like I said, I'm not getting the command yet. We won't have that till early January. January 3rd is the target date. What always happens when we have a change in contracts and February 1st is our mandatory date. We'll always have listings where we get offers on the old form. You know, we'll talk about the process of how we work through that and how we deal with that and answer any more in-depth questions as you work through it. Anybody need to go down the hall or whatever, you have the paperwork on the new contracts and draft right across the front. Everybody good with that? Gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate that. I'm going to invite Steve.
Thank you, Frank.
My clients are all gonna get Christmas. Don't even get it. We're not getting to it. A little liquor, delivery, to go ahead and send them a gift.
Very good. Very good. All right, happy holidays. Start two.
I'm gonna do that with the group of people that can really be able to.
Okay. Your documents on the new form. 1, 2, 3.
No.
Okay, I'm going to see.
He asked me what I tell him we're going to do.
Thanks. Get him under control. He goes and goes. Okay, so you have the 1 to 4 family contract form. And right now, there are no clean forms available. They all have draft across them. And in fact, we'll see one little thing in there that still we think will be changed. This is a result of proposals that were made by the Burke-Larry Committee starting last August. In their meeting that they sent forth proposals to Trex to the commissioners in their August meeting. They put them on the Texas Register, which is the public site that any changes in contract form, any statutory changes have to somebody close that door. We've got a rip wrap in the hallway. Make it all happen. So they have to go into the Texas Register public site. Everybody has the ability to make comments on changes, what's happened. And then all those comments go to the Burke-Larry Committee. If you go to Trex General Counsel, that's Burgess, and they go to the Burke-Larry Committee. And Burke-Larry Committee always, that's the first thing they do in every one of their meetings.
as they take a look at all the comments, and there were literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments from the public, from Realtors Association. Some liking the changes, some not liking the changes, some with proposals, some with ideas. So this was a pretty thorough process. And they've ended up with some pretty good changes, pretty good recommendations. Some of them we're going to talk about, which they really, what are they trying to do there? But what you're seeing now was approved by the commissioners in their November 7th meeting, which was their 4th public meeting. They have 4 public meetings each year. One in February, one in May, one in August, and one in November. And these were approved. And then as soon as the clean forms become available, early January, you can either use this one or you can use the new ones. The new ones become mandatory February 1st. And we'll talk in our January class about the process and how we work through that and deal with it. So we're going to just right now look at some of these changes because you'll see those in the blueprint and we'll see some red line things in here. And we'll talk about what they were trying to do and if we feel like this is going to resolve everything or there's still some things to still be done. So there on page 1 of the contract, you see in paragraph 3, some language added to 3A, which is cash. And paragraph 3, that's the sales price and what makes up the sales price. 3C is sales price, 3B is financing, 3A is cash. So when you look at this change, everyone take just about 30 seconds and read what they've added there. What do you think we're trying to do there? Or what do you think you're addressing, Holly?
I'm confused by the sentence, so I want a clarification. So when it says by the sale of other property discussed, is this to keep people from writing a contract saying they're gonna pay X amount of cash because they're depending on the contingent sale of their property, but then sometimes in this market, people have not disclosed that they have to sell their property first?
Yeah, that's
Is
one
that
of the
what that
follow-up
is?
questions that we'll have when we see this language. First initial thought was to deal with the fact that people making cash offers feel like if they make a cash offer, their offer get accepted. And yet they were actually borrowing the money with a cash portion. Maybe they were borrowing it from stock account or hard money or whatever. And the feeling was that if we have this language in here, the seller can rely on the fact that they really do have cash and it's not borrowed money. There's not actually financing involved. But the follow-up question before I get to Holly's specific question, just another one of the things that is like semi-address here. If it turns out at closing, the buyer has the full amount of the sales price to pay the seller. They ended up borrowing some of that, or they in default. And so the attorneys we've talked to say, well, maybe, but what's the point? We're closing. Remember, at closing, it's all cash to the seller anyway.
Right.
So I said, well, yeah, I see you've got 400,000 and there it all is, but did you borrow some of that? What do you care? What's the point? Here's your $400,000. So they feel like it'd be a hard case to make to do that. But we understand that this was an attempt to address cash through cash. Now, to Holly's specific point, notice we've got some language in here. Except as disclosed in this contract. So if the buyer, for example, uses the seller of the property addendum, which in paragraph 22 checks off the box. He's now said to the seller, I'm going to pay cash. Here's why I'm getting the 400,000 cash. I'm selling my $800,000 house. Is that as otherwise disclosed in this contract? I mean, that's okay to have a cash contract. So 3A and 3C will be the same number, but here's where I'm getting. I'm not borrowing it. It's coming out of the equity of the other house. Now, here's the thing we need to remember about the buyer's need to sell another house by your listing. They're not required to tell you. They're not required to tell the seller, not required to tell the listing agent. They can't lie about it. They're asked, they say, oh, well, not really. They can't lie about it, but they don't have to disclose it. And many lenders don't address it in their pre-qualification letters. So you have to ask, as a listing agent, you always have to ask. And it surprises the heck out of me. But at least half of the listing agents don't ask. Don't ask for proof of funds. You don't ask, well, do they have a house? They just don't ask. And if you've got the buyer and they don't ask you, then go down the fat and happy road, and do whatever you want to do. Because they don't care. Yes, sir.
I have a very real situation in which I have one individual who's coming to the Dallas area. And he is borrowing against his own stock equity account. He's paying by cash.
That's prohibited.
That would be.
I mean, that's what's prohibited. Here it's saying no.
Okay,
Yeah, but what the buyer's saying to the seller is, I'm not borrowing any money. And this gets into things like, you've got a bank line of credit. And I'm pulling it out of the line of credit. One of the things that the attorneys who we've talked to about this, and some of them were previously on the broker lawyer committee, and some of them have recently just come off broker lawyer committee. As they kind of work through this concept of what they say is, one of the other factors is if you're borrowing money from some source that puts a lien on the property. That's truly borrowed money. And the seller needs to know you're borrowing money to do this. And so there's a third party that's not a party to the contract that's involved in making the same work. We need to know about that.
so how would that go? So it just wouldn't happen?
No, it wouldn't be, because you'd have to say to the buyer, I do have borrowed funds. This cash amount that I'm putting here, whether it's a wholesale price or not, is borrowed money. It is borrowed money, and you have to disclose that, have to make sure that the seller knows that, or the seller make a decision whether to take your buyer's offer or not.
So
Even if you're borrowing.
if they say yes,
If you're what?
Borrowing from yourself, like your IRA, you're taking money out of your IRA.
Yeah, it's borrowed money.
No, it's not.
So all.
Well, okay, now, here's one of our other challenges. Okay, wait, stop. Here's one of our challenges. We don't have a good definition for borrowed funds. We have a concept. What they're doing is they're taking this one step at a time, and they're trying to say, if you're borrowing money, hard money loan, things like that, things like that. They say, well, it's, if I'm just taking the money out of my life insurance contract or something like that, it's really not borrowed. I don't show it as income. I've actually used equity out of one of my investment properties. There's so many variables in this. What we're trying to do is make sure if we've got the listing, we represent the seller needs as much information about the source of funds for the buyer, regardless of what it is. This particular point here is trying to address a very specific situation where we've had, especially when it was an incredibly competitive scenario with 20, 30, 40 offers, and people were just out and out lying about this being a cash offer because they were really getting money. We're saying we're really trying to address that. But we can't eliminate all the issues and all the problems. But if you've got a source of money, for example, one buyer who was borrowing money, his bank was using the value of his stock as collateral, not going to take a lien on the property, but he was borrowing that money.
Yep.
Well, it was totally subject to the value of that stock. It dropped dramatically, 90% overnight. Well, he no longer had the collateral for the loan. So we had someone outside of the parties to the contract. It wasn't disclosed, and this buyer no longer qualified, couldn't do it. So he was able to get out under buyer approval in paragraph 2 of the contract. But we're trying to address those variables. You're not going to fix all the issues. What you're trying to do is say, you got the seller, you need as much information you can get about the source of funds for the buyer. If you're going to pay cash for it, we're going to pay your use down payment. Where's that money coming from? Okay, Joe, Holly, and then Larry. Joe?
How about a HELOC on an existing property?
Same thing.
Okay, is that borrowed funds?
Well, it really
Is
is.
that borrowed funds?
Longer than on the other.
Is that borrowed funds?
Yes, because if you did.
It might be.
Refi, that's-
Okay, here's our problem. We don't have borrowed funds as a defined term. We don't know. Property, that's a defined term. We know what that is, paragraph 2A. Got that. We don't know. We're going to continue to have the challenge of how we even define that. Say, well, I'm technically not borrowing. That's really my money. That 401k, that's technically my money. Well, and then it's going to come down to a seller saying, well, technically it really is borrowed funds. There's something we said? Okay. As you work through that. The key thing here from our standpoint, practical standpoint, representing buyers and sellers, is from the seller side, we've got to know how far we want to go with borrowed funds. And if you're in a competitive situation and you're suspicious about where they're getting the money, that's a different conversation. If this body is short in 6 months, you go, hey, just hope we got the money, hope we close it. It works good. Holly, did we get your question? Go ahead.
Semi. So for me, Joe said HELOC. HELOC is just like taking out a loan, although it's a secured loan, but you're paying back with interest and money, right? So it's an interest-based loan. During the height of the craziness, when I had buyers, because I had buyers that couldn't pay all cash, in order to make their offer look more advantageous, we were using the value of their 401ks, because you can pull out money for a 401k without penalty to purchase a home.
Yep.
So we would show them, they would put in an offer for like, say, 50%.
Yep.
Which was their option, right?
Sure.
And we could prove up funds through our 401k, and there was plenty of room there in case the stock market started to go down. But there's no interest paid on that. There's no money paid back. Now at closing, they may have only done 20%, but we didn't have to tell them that, because at the end of the day, it was still a loan, and we, for
Here's the underlying concept of borrowed funds. There's someone else, third party, who is going to have to provide the money. And what are the conditions under which they will provide that money and not provide the money?
So a HELOC, the bank provides the money to you, and it's
Maybe.
it's your
And they
money.
may or may not. Some, because we're talking a third party that we have no control over. Remember, they're not a party to the contract?
Right. Yes.
So you're meeting over there now? They're not part of the contract, so we can't make them do anything. We can't, in fact, so here, the decision has to come from, say, okay, you know what, yeah, yeah. Yeah, stock fund forward, yeah, I did that on my last year, sure, that's good, not a problem, I'm good with that. So the seller's got to make a decision, how comfortable am I with that source of funds? This is just trying to provide you information, saying, the concept is, if you got to borrow the money to buy the house, you can't make it a cash offer. That's the underlying concept, what they're trying to do.
Then it's, okay, so Joe's point is, I'm saying, I'm disagreeing back. So he's saying, I disagree. I said, the HELOC can pull your ability on any time. But his point is, but if I've already taken the money out, but that's different. Then you show cash in a savings account, and it has nothing to do with the HELOC. It doesn't have control. No, that's not.
Well, that's where you discover later, you've got a savings account, that's a 5-year savings account, you've got a penalty if you destroy it.
Yeah. But
You've got a
that's-
whole different conversation.
you're-
So
No,
this gets,
what you're saying is, you have a customer who owns his house outright, but he doesn't want to sell it before he buys a home. So he wants to take, let's say he owns the house free and clear. So he takes out a HELOC. And then he takes the money from the HELOC and puts it into his, like Holly said, into a bank account. And now he's got enough to purchase his next house, let's say $400,000, whatever the number.
I wouldn't think that's borrowed funds.
It's not.
That's what I'm saying.
But
It's not
there's a
borrowed
difference
funds.
between having taken.
That HELOC is on.
Line of credit that you're gonna borrow.
But see, you've already taken the money out.
So that's why it's.
You put it in, you're now liquid that money.
Yeah.
And so if it's liquid, you don't have borrowed funds. The problem with a borrowed fund is you've got someone else who has to do something. Here, you don't have that third party has to do something. The buyer, who's one of the parties to the contract, has the money in the bank in the conversation. Larry?
That's the distinction.
Everything's clear.
Yeah, if there's liquid cash there, you're not borrowing it from anyone. Now, if you're borrowing the money that you're putting in the savings account, that's a different conversation. Larry?
So mine is a question from the buyer's agent's responsibility.
Okay,
I have a real life this week situation. I got a lady who tells me she's a cash buyer. And it's gonna be about 1.7 million. She told me that. What's my responsibility as the buyer's agent to verify?
no responsibility. Your responsibility is not to lie if the listing agent asks you. If the listing agent says, you know what, cash deal, 1.7 million, love it, where's the money?
Right.
What you want to know on the listing side is where is the money, right?
Show me the money.
So I don't ask for proof of funds, but if the listing.
Well, you would, because you can expect,
Why you wasting your.
you expect for that to react. So you're gonna go and say to your buyer, before you spend a lot of time with your buyer, time, energy, money, you need to know it's a legitimate buyer and they've got the money. So you're gonna say, and it's an okay thing to say. A good listing agent is gonna ask me for the source of funds. And not all listing agents will, as we know, but you can tell your buyer, here's what'll happen, so let's go ahead and be prepared now. Well, I understand, you got a $1.7 million buyer, you want to work the deal, want to get it done, you want to keep them happy. That's a slippery slope,
No, because I think.
because they become very entitled.
Plausible deniability, right?
Yeah. So here's one thing that I want us to feel, this is just an attempt to try to get away from a specific issue, a specific problem. It's gonna be a work in progress. It's gonna depend on what really happens, how listing agent, buyer's agent make use of this. And as the market has shifted and changed in and of itself, that's gonna impact on this. This was a much bigger problem 6 months, a year ago than it is today. Depending on price range and everything, things like that. But it's gonna be interesting to see how this is. This is the longest and most detailed question on this change that I've had yet. But not surprising because it's you guys.
Do you think it's gonna be helpful? Because can't is an interesting word. You said you can't do that. I thought, oh, that's an interesting word. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you're willing to take risks for it.
You're exactly right. You can do whatever you want to, and the seller has to make a decision because frankly, the seller's concern on source of funds is where is it? Because the big thing the seller has to prove out is what am I gonna get and when am I gonna get it? And what are the conditions that impact on that money, what it is and how I'm gonna get it? So the seller has to make a decision working through that. Yes, sir.
From what you're saying and from what this is reading, and this happened to me twice over the summer. This actually eliminates the situation in which cash funds are held overseas and they're not here in the United States.
No, if it's not borrowed, that's okay. My conversation from a seller's standpoint, because we've been through this with foreign investors. The seller's gonna say, we want to know where the money is, we want to know where it is right now. If it's overseas, as you know, many countries have a significant limit on how much money you can transfer out of the country over any period of time. So if all of a sudden you've got somebody who's gonna pay 1.7 million in cash, because they've got that kind of money, they may not have the ability to move that amount of money in the term of the contract. So seller says, well, see, you got a lot of money and this is great. I mean, your family owns the whatever there, and you got bazillions of dollars, but can we get it? Can you bring it here and close the transaction? And that's a concern for the seller. Your job as the listing agent is to help the seller understand, here's what's going on. So, well, it doesn't sound very good to me. Yes, sir.
On a deal like he's talking about, I had a similar situation and the buyer was getting money from overseas. We had to put a $10,000 option money up. And if you didn't get the money in, we kept the $10K.
That's rich. That's nice though. That's for yourself.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, Janet.
Okay, I don't know how this works. I think a lot of people that are paying cash are paying cash because they were getting the money from the reload company on the sell of their house. So I don't even know how that works. At what point do they give that money?
You guys, one at a time.
Like, I don't know how the process works. To what point do they actually get that money? So it's the difference between saying, we're planning on having the money, but we don't really have the money. So we're back to this whole thing again.
They're basing their ability to pay cash on what happens to their house. They've already got theoretically a buyer with a reload company. They've already, if they've signed off on it, they've gone ahead and sold it.
They don't really have the money.
Well, and they may or may not have, depends on their contract with reload company.
I'm just saying, is this the kind of thing that we need to kind of learn to understand?
Sure,
We can
yeah.
know in social business, we need to say, we're gonna have the money, but here's the letter from the reload company saying that they're gonna be
Absolutely.
paying it.
Because what if the reload company changes their mind? What if the person who wrote the original letter is not with them anymore and they got a whole new deal? There's a risk. Anytime you're dealing with institutional sellers or buyers, which includes a reload company, jump through more hoops, you've got, more risk. It's always a challenge. Seller's got to make a decision on that.
Do you find this helpful? I personally don't find it helpful. I think that we should already.
It's confusing.
We should, yeah, because I don't find it helpful at all. I think we should have already been exploring the source of funds anyway, and I don't see that this adds to that.
I would agree with that. I don't find it to be a good clause. I actually made comments against it. But listen to me, so it's how that is.
Is it too late to get this out? Are they still in the phase of,
it's,
not a review phase, still a comment phase?
No, it's very much comment. Okay, go to page 2, paragraph 5. Page 9 is a made escrow agent a defined term. And it's not an effect just one way or the other. It's the escrow agent as the title company. is the only non-party in the entire contract that actually says that in paragraph 18, says that you're not a party to this contract. But the lender doesn't say they're not a party. The title company actually said we're not a party to this contract and have no responsibility. They're the only one that actually says that. Lender is not, they're a third party. That's what the third party financing addendum is all about, not the first or the second party. They don't say we're not a party to the contract. Title company is one who does that. So no big change. That doesn't really affect us. We're not concerned one way or the other about what's going. On page 3, we've actually done the opposite. Survey is not a defined term anymore. Oh, it's not capitalized. Again, we don't really care. I don't think that really impacts on us. Now, there's an interesting thing on page 4. We think the legislature just, in the Broker Road Committee, just missed this. So in 6E11, we talk about following notices to be given or attached to this contract. MUD, WCID, bid notice.
But we have, what do we have page?
On page 4.
Oh, I know, but I see that. And so we're gonna double list it on page 4 and then again on page 8. Where we check all the boxes of everything.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, can I finish?
Yes.
Let me work through this.
Is it gone?
It's what I'm talking about, that what they missed. They screwed up. We think they're gonna correct it. And it's 6E11 and 6E7 and paragraph 22.
Oh my gosh.
Now, because what we talk about in paragraph 6E7 on that same page 4, where it talks about here, an addendum containing the required notice shall be attached to the contract. And then required notices, following notice of been or get attached to it. And one of the reasons theoretically that they were removing it is because the PIDs, MUD, so forth have their own notices. So the other thing is, this is a notice. It's not part of the agreement. It's not something the parties have agreed to do within the contract. It's a notice from the seller to the buyer. You know?
It should never have been in there.
Should never been in the first place. Yeah, and so when you look at paragraph 22, what they, in this version, what they've done, and we think this is going to be changed. You see in paragraph 22, the addendum containing no obligation, group district has been lying through, but we think it's going to survive. I think it'll still stay there because of 6E7. 6E7 says, yeah, addendum is going to be attached. We think the addendum needs not be attached. It needs not be an addendum. It's just a notice. And we think that's eventually what will happen. In the interim, though, because the language is there, you've got to do it. You've either got to use that addendum, or you got to have the notice from the PID dealing with that obligation. You have to do one or the other. You got to do that. Okay, look on page 5. Looking in paragraph 7, specifically 7F. You know, we've talked about this for a long, long time. That there's no obligation to seller to provide receipts. So we do a repair amendment and seller agrees to do these repairs. And we have to add to the repair amendment or the amendment or whatever, that's the obligation to seller provide, you know, legible receipts. So, well, they've got some language in here that addresses that now. Seller shall provide buyer of documentation, repair person showing type of work, payment, work completed, seller's expense, and the transfer of any warranties at the seller's expense. Used to be at the buyer's expense. As you work through that. So they're making that change as you work through that. I think you still need to deal with the timing of it. I think you ought to have those receipts prior to closing.
Yes.
Because at closing, too many surprises, you don't say, well, you don't have those, you know, on New Jersey, well, buyer's not going to not close the transaction because they can't get the receipt probably, but they have a right to. Yes, ma'am.
So the thing that pops out to me, I understand all the negotiated repairs or something, but transferable foundation warranties have become a huge problem with fly-by-night companies, and they'll put that they have whatever. So is this going to make the seller have to pay the general transfer fee for the lifetime warranty? Is that included in this?
Look at the language. Okay. It says at seller's expense, arrange for the transfer of any transferable warranties with respect to repairs and treatments. The buyer at closing. So anything that's been agreed to, not was argued, but anything that's been agreed to. If there's a warranty involved in that, if you have foundation work as a result of repair amendment or roof or whatever, and you've got warranties associated with that repair that's been agreed to, then it's seller's expense to have to do that.
But if it's foundation from 2 years ago, it's still on.
Okay, now what you would do as a buyer's agent is you would say to your buyer, you need to call the company and one, make sure they're still in existence.
Right.
And say if they do have a transfer warranty and what's the process and what's the cost. As you work through that, because right now, theoretically, the seller has to pay that cost of anything that's agreed to. Now, a prior existing one, we don't have who's gonna pay for that. Joe, and then.
Well, they added that in 9B5, the whole, 9B5, they added that sentence. About the transfer fees being paid by the city.
It's not transfer fees.
I mean,
Yeah, by the buyer,
by the seller.
That's fine.
by the buyer. This is now for the seller. That's seller's expense. Seller has to pay for it. Before buyer was having to pay for it.
The seller on 9B5.
That's what I'm saying. Seller.
Their agreement.
Okay, yeah. Own is key. We're talking warranties associated with agreed upon repairs, not existing warranties.
So I had a
In
buyer,
paragraph 9, we deal with existing warranty.
okay, so my buyer just bought a home, $400 to transfer the existing foundation warranty. We should have negotiated that because it's not in here, or you still have to have an agreement between both parties. Even though this is in the contract.
Yeah, under the current contract, if it's agreed upon repairs, then it's a buyer's expense.
Right.
If you're looking on page 6, in paragraph 9B4, I'm sorry, 3, where it talks about seller and buyer shall execute and deliver any notices, statements, certificates, affidavits, loan documents, transfer of any warranties, and other documents reasonably required for closing the sale, issue title policy. We don't have who's gonna pay for it. You got to address that. You got to decide who's gonna pay for it. Buyer says, well, it's your warranty. You're selling me on the fact that you got this great roof and you got a transfer warranty, so you ought to pay for it. Whatever the case is, we want the buyer to talk to the warranty company, find out they're still in existence, find out what's required, because some of them have a timeline. You don't transfer this within so many days after closing, you can't have it, you can't transfer it. So you need to know what the timing is, the cost is. I mean, you got to be able to deal with it, absolutely. Back on page 5, the other, it's a little thing, not consequential, where it talks about the residential service contract, the home warranty. Just lets us know that this is actually regulated by TDLR now, no longer by TREC. So TREC is not involved. Paragraph 11, and I know this is going to be a real problem for some of you who use paragraph 11 to practice law. I mean,
No.
I said, Bob, I've stopped doing this, taking up popcorn and shit.
It's all about the deals on the trailer.
But when you see the language here, and the concept still remains, even if you're going to put factual statements and business details, you're going to do it at the written instruction of your client. Such as an email. Your client says, yeah, here's what we want to do. Here's what we want to change. Here's what we want to address. And put it in paragraph 11. Anything other than that, if you're practicing law, and TREC is so serious about that, they've created a whole new working group on the unauthorized practice of law. That's going to affect Janet.
So how do we confirm to the other side that these are the client's words? Do we need to say
Need an email.
per
But
the seller's instruction?
They don't care, probably. The other side just say, hey, yeah, if that language is acceptable to their client, as you work through it, and you say, yeah, I've got an email from my client. Say, well, we want to see that. And you can just transfer the email. You can relate the email to your client, okay with that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Was there something also about having like the attorney write something for you, they're not allowing that any longer?
The attorney has a right on it as they advise the party, which their client. The attorney has a right to write the language and go in paragraph 11.
Well, I mean, for us, like.
No, not for us, they're doing it for the client.
Right, but I'm saying we can't use anything more that's been written for Keller Williams by an attorney. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't have our own template, our own form.
So he's got to write it for the buyer.
Yes, for the buyer or seller. Perfect, you're exactly right.
Okay.
Yep. They're on page 7, appropriations. We just talked about rent prepaid. It just addresses those. Paragraph 8, we're getting all the changes for escrow agent. Hey, Jay, we've already talked about paragraph 22. Paragraph 21, notices courtesy copy to the agent, which we do that anyway. We already, remember our rule, you have to be in paragraph 21. Your email has to be in paragraph 21.
And if you're using the transaction coordinator,
Your transaction board,
their email.
CC your TC team or whoever it is. Absolutely.
They can.
Yeah, keep moving past the contract to that first next form, the amendment form. Paragraph 2, which is kind of our paragraph where we do repairs. They're just making reference to paragraph 7 that addresses completion of them, documentation, transfer warranties, we talked about when we were dealing with 7F. Number 9 of the modification. This is similar to paragraph 11 specifications. These are the 2 areas that we tend to put things in there that may become practice of law. Shannon?
Going back to paragraph number 2 real quick. And what we were talking about before, on the transfer of warranties. Did they bother to ask the warranty companies, say foundation, roof, et cetera, if they would be willing to allow these to be transferred prior to closing?
Did they being who?
It could, did
Who?
whoever writes these,
No.
because will those companies, foundations, roofs, plumbing, HVAC, will they be willing to transfer?
Has nothing to do with the form, has to do with what the buyer and seller do. The buyer's got to take the responsibility of talking to whoever's issued the warranty and find out if they have a transfer of warranty. That won't be addressed in the contract. Have nothing to do with what the vendors do. This is going to be responsibility of the principals of the contract to make sure those are transferable warranties. They've got to do.
It's not the actual transfer that will occur here, it's the obligation to transfer them after.
There's no obligation. Vendors that are not part of the contract, whatever their policies are,
It's a buyer and seller.
yeah, the buyer and seller have to determine what they're allowed. When a seller advertises an MLS, transferable warranty, they better have checked with that warranty company to say that they can do that. So that's their responsibility. It's not going to be in the contract. There won't be anything in the contract that says there's an obligation of parties to talk to the vendors and make sure that they will do it. That's not in the contract. It won't be in the contract. That's steps beyond who we have any control over there, because you got non-parties you can't do anything about. That makes no much sense.
Yes.
Well, I just see someone coming forward and saying, if you're asking me to transfer these warranties
No,
to buyer to seller or seller to buyer.
Okay. The seller is part of the contract. If they promise to transfer warranties, they better have the ability to do it if they're in default. Nothing in the contract will require the vendor to do that, or the vendor to have a transferable warranty. They can't be required to do that in the terms of the contract, because it's not a party to. Make sense?
So our due diligence is able to make sure the warranty is there and.
To make sure your client determines, not you.
Oh, I don't have to do it.
You can't do it. You can't do it. Why is it not okay for you to do it?
It's liability.
Because if you talk to the wrong person, we do that all the time. And they don't. I mean, you talk to little Susie who's saying that anyway, because she's really mad at her company because they wouldn't give her a raise, and she's gone and she's telling people the wrong thing all the time. So your client's got to do it. It's their responsibility. Larry?
That answers my question.
Okay, good.
Is there usually a fee for a roof to be transferred?
I don't know. Is there a fee for a transfer of a roof warranty?
Foundation, it's usually about $100.
Is it, okay, foundation, roofs?
Roofs, not necessarily, I just see
Okay.
it more frequently.
Foundation.
Foundations.
Okay, how about HVACs and like?
I've seen it like $25.
Depends on the company. Yeah.
Depends on the company. Okay, okay. And then at the very bottom of the amendment, it's over an attorney. We're not allowed to give legal advice, which I know that's disappointing to you, but I live with it. Just look at the third party financing addendum. Paragraph G, they've added this to deal with other types of financing, such as hard money loan. You just put those terms in there as you deal with it, because what you're doing on third party financing is the buyers and seller are deciding on information about the type of financing. Because in paragraph 3, the buyer said, yeah, I'll pay you 40,000. I've got 80,000 cash and I'm going to borrow the rest. And here are the terms and how here's going to borrow from. And notice, we don't have the name of any lender in here. We just have the type of financing. You won't see anywhere in the contract or any addendum contract, the name of the lender. So they buyer can every day change to another lender and change to another lender as long as they follow the terms of the contract. Work through that.
Well, it says that Bob and G. It says none of them.
But that's
Okay.
when they add it.
As you go through this.
Hard money lender.
Yeah, and so forth, name of lender.
Yes.
I mean, in the new paragraph they've added. Like a hard money lender, you name that, but as you work through that, there's really not anything in this that keeps a buyer from changing the lender.
It's correct.
Right.
Yes.
Because it's all cash seller, yeah, it should work through. Page 2 of the third party financing addendum. Just one little thing they're dealing with, required by the lender, and it will be, wanted some security vendors leading trust. Look at the addendum for subject mandatory membership in a property owner association. And we've just tried to clarify some more fees deposited for reserves. Prepaid some prorations there, dealing with, with all those types of things as you work through it. Because you may have somebody who's paid their HOA, all that stuff annual in advance. So when you have that closing in August 15th, buyers paid for time that they don't own the property and needs to be prorated back to them. And you got that where it references to paragraph 13, which is your proration paragraph. This is one of the big things that when you have a particular title company's going to close a transaction, you're going to want to know they're going to close it according to the terms of the addendum and not according to what the HOA tells them they have to do. The HOAs have all kinds of challenges with, we always charge a buyer this. I don't care what your paperwork is with. If the buyer doesn't pay you this, he doesn't get to buy the house. Well, that's not, they don't get to do that. So perhaps it takes an attorney to back. The addendum regarding residential leases. This addresses oral leases. And other times, because many times you've got a tenant in there, he's been there for 10 years. The original lease has expired, they've been on an oral lease for 5 years. And this addresses that as you work through that. I cannot overemphasize that if you have either side, listing or buyer, doesn't matter. You've got to be familiar with this addendum. If there's a tenant in the property, not to use this addendum. Holly?
On one of the message boards this past weekend, one of the scenarios that real world scenario was put out there is there was an executed contract to buy a home that was tenant occupied. And the buyer had expressed to the seller that they did not want the lease renewed for the current tenant, which was going to move out, let's say, March. The current landlord, because the property has not exchanged hands, went ahead and re-signed a multi-year lease when the tenant.
But we're not in contract yet.
No, you're in contract and it's been executed, but you're not close.
They do it.
Did, so that's the whole thing on the message board was like, what are the ramifications, blah, 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 for the tenant, are they now gonna have to evict?
Why can the seller not do that? Why can the seller not do it?
Because they should have divided it. before.
Why can the seller not do it?
It's prohibited in the contract.
Paragraph number.
Paragraph 4. Seller is not aware of any leases affecting property after the effective date. Seller may not, without buyer's written consent, create a new lease, amend any existing lease, or convey interest in property. Cannot do it under the terms of the contract. The buyer now has to make a decision how they're gonna move forward. Buyer says, well, you're in default. You can't do this. I want all my money back.
Yeah.
On buyer's money, on option fee, out the money I spent on inspection, because you're in default. If you don't work with us on this, whatever.
You sue for anything else besides that?
Yes.
Pardon me? We don't know.
Can you?
That'd be a legal conversation, being Robert's attorney. But here's the key.
Okay, tell me.
What you need to do is you need to make sure you understand this addendum. In a case like that, this addendum had to be used. And what we do is we get in situations where the landlord and the tenant say, oh yeah, and landlord and seller tells the buyer, oh, not a problem. I know, we're gonna close January 15th, and these tenants are gonna be out by, end of the year. They're gone. It's gonna be either gone, early release, whatever's done. Your advice to your buyer will always be, if you're not going to own this property with a tenant in it, don't close until they're gone. Don't do it. Because when the tenant changes their mind, you know what, now that we think about it, we're going to stay here. We can do this. So, because tenant is not bound by what happens in this contract. So you've got to make sure they understand, use that addendum so the buyer can make the decision what they're going to do. Are they going to take the property with a tenant in there or not with a tenant in there? And you've got to understand the responsibility of the seller and the rights of the buyer for termination. They don't do that. The next one that we're dealing with are dealing with fixture leases. And a key thing that we talked about here are fixture leases. Not fixtures finance. Fixture leases. And so if there's a fixture and it's not under a lease and it's owned free and clear, this doesn't apply. It's only if there's a lease between the owner of the property and, a lessor. Solar panel, security system, whatever it might be. So you need to use this because this has responsibilities. The seller has decisions of the buyer. Buyer says, I'll assume this lease. I won't assume any others. And they've got decisions you get to make in there and what they require, what the seller has to provide going through the process. You need to know what's in this, but you need to also know as a listing agent, what's going on. Are there fixtures here? Are there leased? Are they owned and financed? Are they owned free and clear? What's going on? And our biggest challenge still are solar panels. That's still our biggest problem. And because some solar panels are owned free and clear, some are owned with their finance with a bank, some are a lease. And in spite of what all the solar panel companies say, not every buyer wants a property with a solar panel. Particularly if it's going to cost them something, particularly if there's a gosh off lease. What you've got to always do, if you've got the buyer, if they're contemplating, thinking, we're going to, we'll assume that lease, whatever. You cannot advise them on that lease. They have to have an attorney. Attorney has to advise that buyer on the lease. The buyer needs to get that lease with the lessor, with the solar panel company. And the attorney needs to advise them, here's what's in that lease, here's what you're accepting, here's what you're agreeing to. If there's not a lease on it and it's financed, your buyer needs to make sure their lender is aware of this loan they're about to assume, that they find out what's the cost of it, is there a prepayment penalty, what's happening with this. And they've got to go through that process to know whether or not they really want to buy this property with this additional debt. So you're going to work through it. So those are all diligent things that you, the buyers, you have to do. Janet?
So 2 questions. If a buyer does not want these solar panels and the solar company comes back and says, we're going to take our equipment back.
The seller's solar panel company?
The seller's solar panel company, the buyer does not want those panels. The solar company comes and says, we're going to take panels off the roof is now damaged. Perfect. Is the seller responsible for replacing that roof?
Yeah, and if you look at it, the lease addendum, it does require, the seller is responsible. However, if you've got the buyer and you know that before you close solar panels, if they're in the roof, sometimes they're not a roof and they're separate areas. Your buyer has to make sure that they require the seller to repair any damages by removal of solar panels. And the buyer needs to be very clear and specific. They need to say, not only repair it, but here's the time frame before closing, and the buyer needs to make sure that they've had a roofer or somebody go out there and make sure it's done right. Because there's some real potential damage here as you work through it. And even though if you're using the addendum deal with a lease, it addresses that if it's removed, then the seller is responsible for the damage. As you work through that, and but the reality is you've got to go further than that in my mind, because even though you've got in paragraph A2, seller repair any damages caused by the removal, that's not sufficient. I think the buyer needs to go further than that.
But then in paragraph 7D, 2, under property condition, can be placed there, the buyer accepts property as is, provided seller removes.
Yeah, so if you want to look in 7D where we deal with the as is, provided they do this,
Yes.
as long as you've got enough room to be really very clear and specific, what them to do. Either that, or you need to go to an addendum or put in special visions. But you need to make.
Putting it in 2, is
Well,
if the seller signs.
here's the
it,
key
they're
with 2.
required to do it.
Here's the problem with 2, there's not a lot of room here. So you need to make sure you've got enough room to be very clear and specific
I can
what
do
the
an
buyer
exhibit
needs.
A on it.
What?
I can do an exhibit A, can't I?
That's what I'm saying. If you can put it on a separate paper, like an addendum, an exhibit A would be an addendum to the contract. It should be listed in paragraph 22. So you can do that.
What if your buyer doesn't want it patched, even though, let's say, the roof won't leak? And your buyer wants to push and say, I just want a whole new roof. Is that
Okay,
something?
I couldn't hear all of that.
If the seller wants to patch it, but the buyer wants a whole new roof, what do you do? Is what the question is.
Well, then the buyer needs to be very clear in their demand to the seller. You're going to remove solar panels. Here's the result. Here's what we require. And we do a re-inspection, and if it does not approve, seller, you're in default. So, and that language needs to be prepared by an attorney. Because it needs to be very clear and specific, because it affects the rights of parties. Yes, ma'am.
Second part of that question was from a lot of the new people in the room. We say requires attorney language, or buyer needs to find an attorney, blah, blah, blah. Are the title attorneys available to our clients?
Some of them are, it depends on the title. So the question is, are the title company sufficient? If you do some of this language, depends on the nature of it, depends on the title company. Sometimes Charles Kramer, Kelly Milligan, Brandy, sometimes they will do the language. If they'll do it, there's generally not a charge for it. It depends on how extensive it is. But, that'd be one of the first choices. Remember, under the rules of the Texas Real Estate Commission, you are not allowed to pay attorney's fees for your client. It does not allow it. Directly or indirectly. So we've got several attorneys who have represented our agents and us in several cases. Chase Garrett, Robert Miller, Greg Dowis, times ago. Greg Dowis is generally going to charge you. He's a partner with her. One of his associates sometimes will do it cheaper. But, if they need an attorney to really drop some language and do something and get rid of whatever, if first choice, the title company attorney can do it, that's great. There's generally not going to be a charge there.
But they need to connect themselves. You can give them.
We'll give them the names, but remember what you've also already done. Remember what you've already done? Administrative policy form, you've already signed off on that, and you remind them, here's some names, you pick one, you interview several, you make a decision, that's your attorney. If anything goes wrong, that's your attorney. I've got one agent right now who I've got a challenge with, because she's already said, well, Bob, your attorney, Bob, your attorney screwed up. Try to manage, we were clear from day one. It's our client's attorney. And if there's any cost involved, it's our client's responsibility. I said, I've got that in writing. So, we've gone through that process. The last form you've got here, the only thing I want to make sure we understand about this last form, the oil and gas addendum, as you work through it, and there are the items here. First of all, everything the seller owns is conveyed to the sale, unless he in some way excludes or reserves it. And once you reserve surface rights, oil and gas, things like that, this is the form that the seller would deal with. Buyer would never use this. This is the seller. Said, yeah, I want to reserve this. this is too complex a matter for you to advise on. I said, well, I don't know, is that a big deal? How much is that worth? What does that mean? You know, waive my rights to egress and equal, what is that? First of all, let me spell that, but anyway, said, well, you need to see an oil and gas attorney or a landman. Too complicated, you can never advise them. And the challenge is many sellers don't even know what they own. They don't know the value of it, you can't help them with the value of it. Or you just can't do it. But if you sell it, well, you know, I've got some oil and gas here, I think it's worth a lot, so I need to reserve them, or I need, well, fine. Here's the form you can use, and here's some names of some oil and gas attorneys. And you can, you know, talk to them and see which one to do. But you just can't get in the middle of that. Okay, guys, anything else? I want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday. Tommy, can you do this again? On the new contract forms? Yeah, we'll probably do it in the second contract class in January.
It was not nice to make us think this much today. The holidays.
Sorry about that.
That was not nice.
I know. Everybody says it about Bob, he's not around. Very demeaning.
Nice today, that's all I'm gonna say. To all the good stuff.
Sure.
I don't see you the next year.
That's we're doing the deal together. What?
We're able to get it at the time.
Geographic options. Your better thing is to refer that off to somebody in that area. Down around Georgetown area. It's a great office center, the guy who will be outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 years ago, I could have done it all. They didn't have 3,500.
Yep, and,
Concrete on the patio, busted out. It's not. Yeah, we're still waiting on seats for that, but I'll be honest with you. We were just down. Because we were redoing honeymoon 10 years ago. And surprised that it's, you know, not. It's really. We ended up.
Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, very good to see you, sir.
Are you coming back? You're ready, yeah, I'm on my vacation. All right, you mean, about 3 weeks. When you see him.
Yeah, if I got a higher or a shoulder.
I know. My brother, my son was showing me. Like, you. Merry Christmas. Bob. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Absolutely.
You may not see me until the first of the year.
So Bob, most of you even take the animal vacation.
There you go. Good job. All right.
I didn't want to bring this up, but I'm. That's great.
See it, man. Escrow agent is the title company.
Oh, it's not like Jordan.
It's the fact.
Sounds like a that person does.
Got trouble. Not as much trouble as I am, but. Hi, Diane.
Merry Christmas.
Hi.
Thank
You.
Good year. Christmas.
Christmas, Merry New Year.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a real challenge, and it's amazing me how much it's not addressed.
So many cash buyers, financed.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, we did a whole class on that.
Obviously.
When we were having that typical life, yeah.
That was a big thing.
No, it's supposed to be 15 degrees. So we were done all the.
That's when we check. Try not to look at a contract or anything on the vacation.
I like your optimism.
It's just like we never do a text or anything else
Talk about trouble.
regarding real estate.
Talk about trouble.
We're, paragraph,
Solar way over there. So I can. I have the choice. Why should it not be just that? Right, and then everyone on the care of the.
But that was. But that's trying to decide.
I really want to. Well, no. Yeah, once, I'm looking for criteria, like what did it really?
We became closer.
They go. Then what's the in the second when I was down, I had a great model of course. I guess that's just like a response to your questions. Yeah, she worked that like is. So,
The attorney.
okay, cool. And I'll call you back some. Last year. Yep. Because we were and we're. It's like I was over there. So, given that. Because he was ready.
Well, you know, I do.
And I'm like,
But not. But not. Let's pick up for it. So I just got showing back and then one night we walk. So it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's all I'm started dating. I have.
Sure, be working with. I know previously we were working on.
So we were.
Introduce myself, I'm sure that we're going to submit this first time on a very much special artist. But. It was so cute. Yeah.
We made squeeze me. We decided to squeeze me. We had you know, that's why we were in earnest doing that. But we didn't. Because you never go, it's only managed, there is no remission. We thought we had years together, as opposed to months. That's exactly. So we had a trip to Italy in October, and we had several trips that we planned that for some reason our trip. But we didn't feel like we planned all this stuff, and it just kept. And it just kept happening. Well, it did, and that was like, that was my goal. Part of it was like to look forward from the future and plan. No one's space. Teams on the I did them like back in June. And for all his friends and family, but one of the girls, one of his classmates. I remember there was a picture that ended up on these posters that I made from the 1800s with all these people wearing babies and stuff. And at the center one, actually these installed pictures. Project that's caught up into everything I had to do. And 2 weeks after she sent me, Bailey's back in June. And so it just made it that much, that's just that much more like nobody. You know, nobody's. Exactly. Yeah. I just never. So anyway, that's. Yeah, let's go. One night next week, yeah, this week's time to be crazy. Like my son and I were doing our Christmas dinner tonight because he's basically, well, he'll be with me and he's working every evening between now and through Christmas Eve, so we're gonna go to dinner tonight. Where's your son? Walgreens. Enjoy. Thank you all, appreciate it all.
How was your closing, Jim?
Oh, hey, it went good. Now, this one's, I'm working on another one, so this is a little bit more tedious, but the first one I got lucky, it was just really easy. We did one round to look for homes, they selected it, it was just like transfer, so now that I'm working on this new one, I thought it'd be easier, but now it's all different, so like, calling my coach like every 5 minutes. Help. How have you been? Good. Have you hired a coach to work with?
Yeah, I'm working with you.
Oh, nice.
You were too, right?
I was asking Rebecca, actually called him and didn't pick up my call, so I had to go to the next. I'm sure he was busy at that time. Yeah, he was actually traveling to Latin Laura. Yeah, I was working, well, now I'm working with Laura, but I told her I kind of selected Joe first, because I like when he did his class and it's just easy to talk to and.
Who did it?
Yeah, he did a class on, I think it was open house. So he came in with like all his, no, that was Tom.
Oh, that was.
He was, Tommy did the.
Robert did ours.
Joe did,
The second.
have you attended more, Ignite classes?
I mean, I popped into that one. You
Yeah.
were there. However, Joe did the second, right?
Yeah, I think that's what I did. I don't remember who Robert is, but I want to say Joe did. Maybe it was the second one, but the second one, okay. So I just like when he talked, it's kind of like easy to understand. Yeah.
Share the PowerPoint presentation with me. And I'm modifying it to put my marketing on there.
Right.
And so I delete his picture and underneath his picture is a blonde. So I delete hers, it's another blonde woman. Not even deleting it, it's their picture of itself.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm thinking about attending another Ignite class. I'm kind of like new graph.
You know, a lot of that.
Because I don't know how I feel. I wish you could drive over here pretty often, so I want to do. Yeah, I'm a visual learner, so it's like kind of slow to learn, I guess. But I feel like the only way I'm learning is by experience, so I'm learning as I go, but like, I don't know, I feel like a baby. I mean, obviously I am, but yeah, I feel like a baby. And so when people ask me for, people ask me information, I was like, oh, let me get right back to you.
How I learn as well.
Yeah, so I'm a hands-on learner, but I'm catching on a little. But there's still a lot that I don't know, I feel.
You have the CD.
No, but I am working on one, it's in construction. It's actually in South Dallas, that's another thing, a lot of my clients are in Dallas. And, the homes that I have been working with are Dallas or South Dallas, this next one, let's put in an offer for it. Done, though. Sorry, oh, I know, I heard him talking shit about Dallas even earlier, so I was thinking, should I went into Dallas versus here? It's all the same, right? So I don't know, I'm just like, what do I do?
What is it closer?
Yeah, it's probably about 30 minutes closer than an hour here, right? So I was thinking too. Only because the driving distance is really hurting me, and I know I can be more active in person, then it'll benefit me. So I don't know, though, I guess the closest to me would be Urban, KW Urban Dallas.
Where do you?
I live in Hartman. Yeah, so I'm like on 20 East, in between Forney and
So people go, that would drive all the way downtown, like probably all the way. Irving? No, Dallas, KW Urban, Dallas is like.
Oh, you said urban.
Urban, yeah, sorry, it's not
I
like
think so.
urban, it's a little plain. Yeah, it's urban, that would be my closest. But I'm just gonna say, I don't know how that works, like, as far as like, is it contract rate? You know, lots of called me last week, and I thought about that too, it's the same thing.
That's on five.
Really?
Yeah.
Roswell? That's
So,
good to know.
like, how many,
I need to write that down.
and you wouldn't have heard anything.
Right. So how would I still be with my coach, or do I hire like a coach there? I don't know how to place. Work with the coach there, right? Good idea. Yeah, I'm thinking about that because Channel's really killing me. I didn't think about that when I signed up. I was champions on the year. So, you know, Jill came in and I was like, oh, I'm good. Do you live in Plano? You live in Plano,
I
correct?
live in, it was,
Oh, so you're close by stuff. Not too far. And what I've experienced, which I have to ask somebody, have you done any leases yet?
I would choose, that's all right. So it's a
So,
ton of work.
well, I'm having like, okay, so I closed 3 leases, I was buyer's agent for them. But every single property management has like left them in the dumps, like just not returning their phone calls, so they're like calling me and I'm like, I don't know what to do, so this last one I just closed, they had a gas leak. And water damage on like upstairs or something. So she had to call the gas company to come and then told them that they needed to not break, or I guess knock off and break off the fireplace. So I was like,
Did you go
well,
behind the wall?
yeah, I was behind the wall. So anyways, they will give them a discount. He hasn't sent anybody to go to try and fix anything, so they're without heater, gas stove open. So she's like calling me like, hey, and I'm like,
You know, the problem.
right, and so I called him, and he was like, I've already spoke to her. Yeah, but they have kids, they don't have hot shower or food, and he was like, okay, so. That's why realtors don't work with leases, because it's just the shitty property management. I don't know, but I'm like, I don't know that I wanna do leases anymore, but it's a little money for now to pay my dues. So, I'm trying.
You gotta take care of it.
Yeah. The widow's. It's.
Christmas cards.
Oh, cool. It's nice. What did you get Christmas cards since? Yeah. They're lucky to have you. That's awesome.
And about what you doing?
So you call them or just like?
Just text them.
Oh, cool.
It's the first attempt.
Nice. Like, here. Awesome.
I see.
Hi, Mom, how are you? Good, good. I'll stop by this evening and drop off that, but the soup balls, that's what I made the salsa in. And so I was like, well, let me call her and see if maybe it's another one you're thinking about or not. Okay, cool. Okay, then I'll stop by this evening too and I'll call you before I go that way. Bye. a question. So for earnest money, it's usually 1% of the sales price, correct? Okay, so is it the sales price of what the seller wants, or is it what the buyer is offering?
It's not a rule, it's just.
Okay. Yes, except my Spanish is slang Spanish and not correct terms like contract Spanish, so I'm finding myself on translator. That's why I thought I knew Spanish, which I'm bilingual, it comes fluent, but mine is slang Spanish.
This is Christ, like, I said, we're gonna do the thing. I said, we'll do it, my business, like a job instead.
How much is it, by the way, like, I've never done business cards ever, like family ones, it's really nice. Like your average.
So like, yes,
Not bad.
yes. We're doing.
Good, good.